we took what used to be a highly complex, annoying process and boiled it down to like a couple of clicks.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dan Schnurbusch. Dan, what's going on today?
Oh, John, not a lot. Just settling in to a new week. We've got Thanksgiving stuff going on. So the kids only have 2 days in school, and taking off a couple days toward the end of the week, and gonna just relax and soak it in. Trying to shed some other responsibilities right now so I can take better care of myself and be more at peace. Spread a little thin lately, but feeling good right now. How about yourself?
Yeah, you sound rather chipper today, and I like that. So you probably don't have 4 sick kids at home right now. You're probably getting some good sleep, so that's good.
Yeah, I did get a little sleep the past few days. So, 2 days in a row, which is unheard of
Yeah.
in my, so.
Yeah,
not-
well,
not-
I had a great weekend. I did some deer hunting, which I love to do. Once a year, and I was in a deer stand at 5 o'clock in the morning in 30-degree weather, or probably less than that. And then I made it back home to have a martini with my wife at about 5:30 that same night. So
there you
it
go.
was the best of both worlds there for a quick minute, but
Did you get one?
I did. I got my first. I got a 6-point buck this year, so I got my first buck.
What?
So it's yeah.
My brother-in-law did too. It was like the first one they've gotten in probably 20 years. So we were all, we historically were just making fun of them all the time. Telling them they were just going out there to drink in the woods. And they finally, he and his dad, they finally got one and had it butchered. And apparently it was like $80 or something to get it. I'm not a hunter, so I don't know anything about this. I'm like, that is not a bad price per pound, in terms of filling your freezer.
Yeah, and my whole family loves deer meat, so we obviously process everything and eat everything throughout the year. So it's a win-win.
Wow, what an efficient way to go. And we've thought about getting a cow, but maybe that's a little more traditional, or perhaps less traditional. Maybe it's more the more modern way to do it. I don't know.
So what do we have on tap for today? I know we're going to talk about automating some administrative tasks, or what do you want to go?
Yeah, so I think it was one of the Facebook groups. I don't remember who it was. I think it was one of the estate planning groups where they were talking about, somebody was saying, I'm going to start a solo practice. Can you guys give me some ideas about the things that I should be aware of, as I go out there, that I might not be thinking about? And one of the top upvoted comments or liked comment was like, you are going to have to do a lot more admin stuff than you probably realized. And I have just, it struck me that I just never found that to be extremely true. Like maybe early on it was, but and we were talking about this a little before the show. I think I started automating a lot of the most irritating, admin tasks pretty early because there's so many easy low hanging fruit. So I thought we would talk, about some of that admin stuff. And is it a myth? Is it true? How do we deal with this admin thing in a small firm practice without hiring like 10 people to do all of it?
Yeah, but
what do you think?
I think you're clearly an outlier when it comes to the traditional person starting a law firm. I know that, for me personally, when I started my firm about, 6, I guess I'm coming up on 7 years. That, for the first year, I was kind of trying to just figure things out on my own. I had almost, I don't even know if I had Zapier even connected or even started with that. Right. I mean, I kind of was kind of just wading through the muck in the dark, basically. And then slowly, and then for other reasons, not being plugged into, great groups like the Maximum Lawyer and whatnot, or in different, Lawyer on the Beach, all these different groups that are talking about automations now. If I would have had that access to that or been plugged into that kind of network to start, I think my administrative headaches would have been much less throughout my life cycle of my firm.
That's a good point, because I actually got hooked into the Maximum Lawyer and Lawyer on the Beach community before I even started my firm. They're actually the ones that kind of motivated me to start the firm. I started listening to I don't remember exactly how I found it. I was just looking for like podcasts about, I don't remember what I was looking for, but I ended up finding the Maximum Lawyer podcast and started listening to that like at least a full year and a half, maybe 2 years before I started my firm. And I was listening to that like almost every day,
Yeah.
driving to and from work and just like dictating like voluminous notes. I have like hundreds of pages of like, dictated notes of like, oh, that's a great idea. I need to be doing that. And just, if it were not for those resources, I probably would have been going in blind too. But it did feel remarkably better prepared, I think, having that kind of thing out there.
Yeah.
Big,
Or
big props to those groups.
I mean, when you start out, I mean, the basic stuff, right? I mean, you're probably, I mean, I was answering my own phones, for a while, and then I was just like, I just like didn't want to answer the phone anymore. That's the classic kind of thing where because you get like, stuff that, you get 3 different types of calls. You get calls that are not related to what you want. You get crazy people, and then you get, actually calls that you want, right? But the calls you
Yeah.
don't want and the crazy people just destroy your mental capacity to deal with the people you do want.
Yeah.
And so you have to have somebody else basically doing that job for you, right? Whether it's a call
Oh,
service or
yeah.
not. But
Yeah. And that was one of the major uh, things that I got off my plate, like from day one, because I had heard about, Smith AI and Ruby Reception and all these things through Maximum Lawyer. And at the time that I started my firm, and this is kind of like if we're starting from like front to back of the law firm, like in a client journey experience, like the intake process, um, I knew that I didn't want to be answering the phone from the day one because I wanted to present this kind of more professional, appearance. I didn't want to be the guy answering the phone. And I didn't really want like a call tree, auto attendant. Um, and so I started looking through Smith AI a, a virtual receptionist.
yeah.
And at the time that I started, they had like tailored plans, or maybe I talked them into doing a tailored plan. I don't know what I was, but they would answer 10 calls a month, which at the time was more calls than I was getting. So, which is kind
Of
of
course.
hilarious to look back on now. Um, but at the time, that was more calls than I was getting, and they were charged like at the time, like $7 or $8 a call. So it was like $70 a month
Yeah.
to have somebody answering the phone from day one, and it scaled as the call volume, you know, 10x or 15x or whatever we're at now. Um, it it scaled dynamically throughout the whole way. And that's one of the advantages of a virtual reception service. So that was an easy admin win from the beginning, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about just the basic automations when it comes to intake, the calls coming in, right? I know on my end, so we have, our calls, we have our intake specialist internally who answers all of our calls. She fills out a jot form that we've created to be basically just make it really easy to collect the information that we need for that screen, right? For that call. Is this a case that we want to accept? She submits the jot form online, hits the button, zaps it into Pipedrive, creates a new deal. The new deal in Pipedrive automatically sends them an email and a text saying, "Hey, we're reviewing your case. We're looking at looking at everything, and here's a great what is it? What to do when a loved one passes away. Our kind of PDF probate
Yeah.
guide, right, for everybody. So, and then we kind of decide on if I'm gonna do, basically we either schedule a consultation in that initial call that she takes anyways, or my intake specialist will sign it up herself, depending on the level of the call. So that's kind of our basic setup for automations on intake.
Yeah. Yeah. Very similar on our end. So like, uh, and this was something that I had set up pretty early. But if you have like a CRM, like I know you use Pipedrive, I picked up LawMindex from day one. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted the data from our phone calls to be going into our CRM. Like if somebody called, I wanted a record of that call and I wanted a new case set up in there. And fortunately, that's a really easy zap. Like if you're like getting started and you're trying to learn how to do like I think we have a zap that's like, because Smith AI has their own Zapier connection, right?
Yeah.
So if you're using Smith AI as your receptionist and paying your whatever it is, $100 a month for your 10 calls or whatever you need when you're first starting out, you can set that Zap up real easy. It's like step one is just like call received in Smith AI. Step two, create lead in Lawmatics. Like that can be the whole Zap.
Yeah.
And it works pretty well. So that's what we have something similar to that where, a call comes in, and the nice thing that Smith does is they will categorize it as if it's a new lead or an existing caller, because they have their own system of tracking like whether it's an existing call or whatever. And so they'll label it in the Zap of whether it's a new lead or whatever, and then you can kind of determine whether to create a new matter or filter it if it's a new lead or not. And then there you go. All of a sudden you're creating a new matter for every caller, every new lead that calls in, that you're getting data tracked on it. Like if you set up an intake form in Lawmatics, which takes you like 20, 30 minutes to set up a basic one, maybe less, 10 minutes for a basic one. And then all of a sudden you're doing a lot of your basic data entry during your console call rather than having another human do it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how person calls in, the Zap sends the data to Lawmatics. They have our Calendly link. So like we use another big admin area is scheduling.
Yeah.
And I picked up Calendly, a Calendly subscription from day one as well for scheduling, and gave the link to the Smith people and told them, hey, if it's a new lead, use this link to book them. And there you go. Now all of a sudden you've automated and delegated, phone call reception, setting up matters in your CRM, and scheduling. Like those are three major areas of admin that you've just gotten off your plate for like, what is it, like $50 a month or something, not including the CRM, or less, $100 a month.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, I mean, Calendly, I think, is the best bang for your buck when it comes to scheduling. I mean, there's their functionality, the price point, everything, being able to build different links for different types of scheduling, whether it's a 15-minute consult or whether it's a 1-hour discovery call or whatever it is, time blocking certain area. I mean, no one schedules calls on my calendar through Calendly, on Fridays. Okay. They don't schedule them before 9:00 and before 3:00 on, during the week. So, you can custom block it out. It's a great tool. I mean, if you're not, it's great for scheduling, and doing those administrative tasks for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, one of the pieces in that would be, your engagement agreements, right? I know there's still lawyers out there, lots of them, who are either emailing a PDF that they are kind of, it's their standard form. It's just like, here's my PDF, to the client to physically sign and send back to them, right? I mean, so obviously automating the engagement agreements is a huge, very easy thing to do. We use DocuSign and Power Forms. I've used that for 6 years, where all you do is click on a button and it pulls up the most recent representation agreement. They DocuSign it, and it comes back to me, and then you can pull trigger, and you can basically set up triggers off of that, right? You'd sign this type of rep agreement, then this triggers this through Zap, right? So
Yeah. Engagement agreements are definitely another huge admin area where, if you didn't have some kind of automated system doing it, like you're the person that would have to be like manually sending those out. And if you're not sending them for e-sign, like, oh my God, then now all of a sudden you're talking about, mailing them stuff or emailing them a PDF, like you said, to fill out. So like we handle that in Lawmatics, where I think Pipedrive has a similar thing, but you may have to pay extra for it, and it's probably not as good as DocuSign. Like we have Lawmatics just has native integrated e-sign. So like we create an engagement agreement template and give it a little conditional logic. Like if it's an estate planning case, then this, if it's probate, then this language. And then on your intake form where you're setting, this is a practice area of probate or, traffic or whatever your practice area is, you just set the engagement up so that it kind of swaps in and out provisions based on what kind of case it is. And then we have an automation in Lawmatics that as soon as they reach the stage of send engagement, it just fires the engagement to them from text and email, and it'll send it to them every couple of days until they sign it. It's like, so like all the steps in there, think about that. Like you've automated the preparation of the engagement, of making it read how you want it to read. You've automated the the sending of the engagement. You've automated the follow-up of the engagement. Hey, did you still want to work with us? All that can be done with a decent CRM system pretty easily. That's several different admin tasks that are now like built into an automated computer flow that you just don't have to worry about anymore. And it's so freeing to
Yeah.
get to that level.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and you think about it the first kind of part of the client experience, right? Is the call coming in, the rep agreement, and then for some of our practitioners, PI obviously not, but we as part of our probate law firm, I mean, for every single case that we accept, in our firm, which is all probate cases, right? We require an upfront advance payment, right? So we have some sort of advance payment made, which is an easy, click on this link. It's an automated, link that's sent to the potential client, as part of a templated email and text in Pipedrive. So it automatically sends those, and they're able to just click on that. It goes into LawPay, and then they make their payment, as necessary for that case. So we also have it set up where we do offer, payment plans for certain clients that are unable to make. We want to make sure that there's enough assets in the case that we're gonna, that we're not worried about not getting paid for our attorney's fees, right?
Mhm.
So on those cases, some of those cases we'll offer, where people are unable to make the required upfront payment. We'll offer them a payment plan, right? Which is also just basically there's a special DocuSign. It's an actual installment agreement where they're agreeing to make installment payments, right? They click on that, they submit that, and then that triggers a zap, which then zaps their information into a payment processing platform called ChargeOver, and then ChargeOver processes the payment, and then automatically sends invoices. So, automatically sends them their first invoice and then their follow-up invoices every 30 days. And then I'm able to track that, all of the payment processing, or at least the installment payment people that are all in ChargeOver. I can see who's made their payments, who hasn't made their payments, who's on track, if I need to follow up with anybody, et cetera. Um, and the whole process is fully automated, from that perspective on the payment side.
Yeah. And that's for flat fee payments. Like we have a handful of, I think we've pretty much gotten rid of like almost all of our hourly billing cases. But for a while we were doing hourly billing. And like I remember at the firm I used to work at, like getting bills out was like a big administrative like thing. Like somebody, I think it was an admin person, would generate like draft bills, and then the partners would go through it and like strike out whatever they wanted to strike out or reword anything. And then they would hand it to the associate, and the associate would go through and review their time and like make sure there was all whatever. And they would give it back to the admin person, and the admin person would turn it into final invoices, and the final invoices would get sent. It was like a gigantic, like multi-step thing. And, and now like, we use Lawmatic's time and billing. I know some people have gripes with it. I've never been able to figure out exactly what their concerns were.
Yeah.
Um, but at the beginning of the month, not so much anymore, but whenever we need to send out invoices for hourly time, you just click like generate invoices, and then you hit like a checkbox or whatever that generates all invoices for all cases that have time in the system. And then, you can skim through it if you want, but most of it's my time. Or my paralegal's time, and I trust her implicitly in terms of how she bills. So I'm not worried about it. But, if you wanted to, you could audit all those entries and change them or strike them out or whatever. But, as soon as you're comfortable with it, you just hit like send all invoices, and it will email and text them out to no matter how many people you have. If it's 1,000 clients,
Yeah.
it will send those all out and then drip them reminders to pay every however long you set. Um, and I was just sitting there thinking like, we took what used to be a highly complex, annoying process and boiled it down to like a couple of clicks. On a bad day, you spend 20 minutes on invoicing, once a month. Um, and for some people, it's a huge administrative headache. It's like, it doesn't have to be. You just use good technology.
Yeah. I mean, and I used to, yeah, I definitely had that experience, along the way where, um, because I use Filevine, right? And Filevine's billing and time was absolutely horrendous. I don't even know what it is now because they didn't have a native sync with QuickBooks. So like literally, they had these third parties creating creating a custom sync that was different from which third party you got, right? So you could have a different sync than the guy next to you because they use a different third party. And then you're paying them, they were charging you their extra just to import your time into QuickBooks in the proper way. So it's just like, this is terrible. And
Yeah.
they may have done, I think they've done some revamping in recently, but um, I use a platform called Minute 7. It's actually, it's QuickBooks, or it's Intuit's, one of Intuit's, just companies they bought along the way. It's a very simple program to enter time and expenses. So everybody enters in there, it automatically syncs everything into QuickBooks, and then I go into QuickBooks and I just pull up the invoice. I just add everything from there, and send out the invoices. So, um,
Huh. That is a platform I have never heard of before. So I'm gonna have to.
Minute
I'm gonna have,
7.
yeah, never heard of
Yeah,
that
I
one.
mean, like I said, it's a small kind of just like, basic functionality, but it does exactly what I wanted to do, and it took me a while to find a program to do that, to interlay over QuickBooks, because I want everything, because we do a lot of analytics tracking through QuickBooks. Everything is done through there when it comes to all of our SKUs, profitability per, margins, the
Mm,
number of, all the data that we track is all done through, back-end analytics through QuickBooks, and, their system. So
gotcha. Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. So yeah, so that I mean, those are just some examples about like how that is all the way through that initial glide path can be more or less completely automated from an admin standpoint, or easily and cheaply delegated to outsource virtual receptionists. I mean, like that whole sequence, like that we just talked about there, you could probably knock out for well, and like, you can make it even cheaper too, because like I'm a big AppSumo junkie. I just like watching their deals and seeing what apps are coming out for free or discounted rates. And they have a native app called TidyCal, which we actually use for the podcast for scheduling, which costs like $30 for a lifetime sub, and it's like a Calendly competitor. It
yeah.
doesn't have all the features of Calendly, like, and we still use Calendly because it have a couple awesome features like routing forms and stuff like that. But it's like Calendly Light for a $30 lifetime fee. So like if you want to bake in, scheduling links and self scheduling or virtual reception scheduling, like it doesn't have to be any more expensive than a $30 one time fee.
What's the
Um,
I'm of the mindset of you get what you pay for most of the time when it comes to tech products. Where's the catch at on these things? Because you're like, you have Documentero, right? Or that you like and use. You have these other things that are $30. Like, I, I'm where's the catch? I'm always looking for the
they,
catch. Like $30
they're
for a
they're
lifetime use, or like
they're
$150 for a lifetime use for Documentero. Like, where's the
yeah. I mean, there is a catch with all of them. It's just how big of a catch it is depends on um, depends on your personal situation. I think our audio and video are disconnected.
Yeah, don't worry about
Um,
it. It'll work itself out.
okay, sorry. So yeah, so like, well, to give the TidyCal example, like TidyCal, it doesn't have all the features of Calendly. Like, I don't know that it has like team. I'd have to look through it. I don't know that it has like team scheduling stuff. I don't know that it has like it doesn't have routing forms, for example. So like one of the nice things on Calendly is we give Smith a routing form. So they basically check a couple boxes and it will intelligently send them to the correct booking page depending on, is it a client? Is it a new lead? Is it a attorney or whoever it is? So they don't even have to think about which link to use. It just finds the right link for them. But I don't even know if that's necessary because their system logic is pretty darn good. But so I mean that's really the catch with it, is just it doesn't have quite as many features. But if all you need is like, I need a link to let somebody schedule a Zoom meeting or a phone meeting, uh, and have rules on when they can schedule, like TidyCal will do that for $30 one time.
Yeah.
Documentero, I've been thinking a lot about what the limitations of it are relative to a tool like Gavel, for example. And the main limitations are um, that you have to build your own data source. Like with Gavel, like it has, it stores the data in the like data warehouse tab or whatever. So if somebody submits a form, well, you can go pull that same form back up and all the data's there. Whereas you can't do that with Documentero. It has to be connected to a data source. Like that's why we have Airtable. We build it on top of Airtable. Um, Whereas you could build it on top of anything though, like Clio or, my case or whatever. As long as you have a place to get the data out, or
Yep.
even if it's just a simple intake form, you could use that, but it wouldn't save the data anywhere, right? So Documentero doesn't have a storage of database. and it doesn't have an automation engine. So like, let's say you wanted to automate like 15 different templates, whereas a tool like Gavel, you just prep all those templates with the right fields and upload them into the system. And then you check a couple boxes. I need these templates to be generated, and it will generate all those. Whereas with Documentaro, it's best used through the API. So like you need to go into make.com or Zapier and like actually create the nodes that say, all right, this document will be generated when this condition is satisfied. So like you have to build the engine. So like there's definitely more, more setup to it. But then Documentaro is like $170 one-time fee. So if you're going to be building in Make and you're going to use a tool like Airtable or something anyway, it makes a lot of sense. So it really depends on who you are, what you're doing. But you're right. There are catches. They're usually AppSumo deals are missing some feature that the main industry tool has. And sometimes it's something big, sometimes it's something small.
I think at this point I'm now on the enterprise level at Gavel, which I'm trying to get down from because of costs, but
As a small firm.
yeah, I'm trying to get down from that. But yeah, I mean, there's a fine line. There's always this kind of balance between cost and value, right? And actual true value, right? So it's I'm trying to, I always try to keep my costs, try to reduce them, but like I realized that at some point though, that for the client experience that I want in the kind of the operations functionality, unless I'm doing a lot of work building on the back end, right? Of, kind of using cheaper products and just so cheaper products equal more time to build and function, right? Then at least for me. So when it comes to my value build, it's like I know where I am. I want to present a certain level of client experience, which I think is, which what I strive for is state of the art experience, right? What is the best possible experience a client can have? And that just costs a certain amount of money to be able to put together. And you can always trim things here and there, but I think that for functionality standpoint, having that great level of client experience is really important. And I'm very cognizant about when it comes to new tech adding on, one for costs, right? So I don't want to increase costs where I don't need to, but is it really going to, go towards my core functions?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's, critical in terms of adding software. You can definitely get out ahead of your skis and start thinking that every shiny tool is going to solve your problem. Like I had another post, somebody posted in the Legal Tech Collective group this morning was about email. And she was talking about how she was exhausted by her email and she was trying to decide between a couple of email tools. It was, she was like, oh, should I be using Superhuman or Spark? And I sent back a response where I was like, the email tool is not going to help you. Like you could buy all the email tools in the world and they're not going to help you solve your problem, because the problem wasn't with the email tool. The problem was that there wasn't enough information going to the client. So like they weren't, they're asking questions or, the volume of inbound email is so high. So you got to examine like, why is the volume of inbound email so high? Well, in general, it's more a problem of not providing enough information preemptorily or before somebody asks than it is about, automating those outbound information. More about that than it is about, oh, did I respond to that, stack of emails fast enough? Well, it's like, if you only had a quarter of those emails because 2/3 of them or 3/4 of them were never sent in the first place, that's a very different issue. You know what I mean? So easy to think a tool is going to solve your problems. So that's, we've kind of talked a lot about the admin on the front end going through, the sales sequence, engagements, invoicing. But there's obviously admin components like all throughout the entire case lifecycle. Things that come to mind in kind of the middle case management phases would be like generating documents, tracking deadlines, client communication, updating them about the status of the case, things like that. We've talked a lot of these things on different episodes, but those are obviously all administrative tasks, and most of them are ripe for automation, right? I mean, you've talked about your use of your portal, right, with case status.
Yeah, huge fan. They have a
Yeah.
ton of automations that you can build in. I mean, pretty much anything you wanna do or send to them, you can. Send videos, you can send a checklist to them, the client, and for the most part, that's fully automated on our end. Like, we don't if you're asking a client for the same thing in the same case at every single at the same time, right? There's absolutely no reason why you or your administrative staff should be doing that. It should be fully automated to trigger, set up something, this other ancillary thing changes, whether it's a phase or, however, you track your cases. Those things should just have to be automated at this point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Client communication, I think, is another huge one. Communication and correspondence is always like the top bar complaint. And like, uh, it's the thing that most clients complain about is not having communication from their attorney. But it's like not that hard to automate it. Like if you're using a CRM or a case management system, some kind of like tool to track your cases, like at least one of those properties should be like, what phase are we in of this case? And
Yeah.
and virtually all cases can be broken down into phases. Even if you're in like abstract, complex litigation, like you still have like pre-lit, discovery, pre-trial, trial, post-trial. Like you can still break it into phases and
Yeah.
provide the client with like lots of information at each piece of those, each phase in that case. Let alone if you run like a highly procedural, process-driven practice like probate or trademarks or something like that.
Estate planning too.
Um,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like each phase, just set up an automated email in your system. Like every system can send automated emails pretty much. And if they can't, that system probably is connected to Zapier. Just have a two-step zap. Phase is X in case management. Send Gmail email that says this stuff. And
Yeah.
there you go. All of a sudden, you've automated a huge value add for your client, and they're getting more information.
And
Admin task off your plate.
along those lines of the communication too, and I found this is super important to keep clients happy, right? We constantly we track our client experience through case status, right? They rate us at every phase change. They give us a 0 to 10, because we want to make sure that we're providing the best possible services to our clients, right? So, um, one of the most important things when it comes to client communication that I have found out is that not just the actual communications themselves, but creating that expectation of a time frame for everything, right? "Hey, client, we just filed our documents with the court. Expect 30 to 60 days in St. Louis County here," right? "Hey, client, we just got a judgment back from the court. It's gonna take at least 7 to 10 days to get the original order from the court in the mail before we can send it to you," right? Constantly tell the client how long it's gonna take for each thing that you're doing so that in their minds, they register it. They don't care if it's 3 days it's gonna take or if it's 300 days. They just want to know. And if you don't tell them upfront throughout the life of the case, if you're not telling them constantly how long things are gonna take, after a week, they're gonna go, "What's going on here? What's happening? Why is
Yep.
nobody getting back to me? Why is this taking so long?" Right? Because you have not established expectations.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. All those emails that you get that are like, what's going on, or just wanted a status update or whatever, like those disappear if the person knows what to expect because you told them. And it's bonus points if you told them through an automation. Um, so that's like a dual problem that you're solving there. Number one, you're solving the admin task of telling them what's going on and what to expect. And number two, you're also at the same time cutting down on unnecessary inbound emails that you have to deal with, which is another irritating and a huge problem for a lot of attorneys. Another irritating issue is email management, um, at the same time. So
Alright.
big, big easy wins there.
I think we're getting close to time here for today's episode. So let's do some tips or some tips of the week or for the episode. One thing that I've been working on recently is my drip campaign. Right, I've been talking about doing this internally for a while. Finally set up a drip campaign for, again, it's all focused around new client intake, right? Conversions, right? So the clients um, who I don't sign up directly on that call and that consultation. If they're not, "Yeah, I want to move forward, send me the links right now, let's get it done." Then they go into two columns, either a very interested column or a lukewarm column in Pipedrive. which tells us how to set priority on follow-ups, right? Is this person, they're lukewarm, or we obviously prioritize following up with the very interested people because those people are more likely to sign up, right? But we have is a automation through Mailchimp. So I've created it's an 8-day drip. Every day there's a new piece of content, actually really good value add stuff, in a newsletter type format that once their deal is drug in Pipedrive into one of those 2 columns, very interested or lukewarm, then they automatically are added as a potential client tag in the Mailchimp campaign. And then once that happens, they're added to the 7 or 8-day drip campaign as well, so that they'll get materials. So we'll follow up according to our schedule, with calls and texts and stuff like that on the follow-ups. But every day they're going to get an email, at least seeing our name, seeing some great content, some 5-star reviews, stuff like that, just to help the conversion process.
Yeah, there you go. That's big. My tip of the week is get off the phones. Like if you're still a solo or very small firm and you're still answering the phone, like you don't need to be answering the phone like we talked about. Call, send an email or reach out to Smith AI or Ruby Reception or Back Office Betties or any of these like phone virtual reception people and see if any of them will work out a small volume deal. Like if you're not getting 100 calls a month yet, see if they'll work out a small call volume deal where you're not spending a fortune. Even if you're small, like you can afford like, $80 a month. And if you can't afford $80 a month, you've got bigger problems than your admin, call volume, right? You should be out there marketing and selling cases more than worrying about admin problems. But, so get that set up and then go the next step and write a super simple app, Smith AI call received, filter by new leads, set up a new lead in my CRM. If you don't have a CRM, put it in a Google Sheet. Track your Google Sheet leads. And if you want to really go the next step, just add a third node. Ooh, a third node, and do a Slack node or a Google Chat node or whatever your internal team communication environment is. Like if you're a Google Workspace family or firm, use your Google Chat. If you're Microsoft Office, put it in Teams. Just add a third node where you drop the summary of that call into a Slack channel or a Google Chat channel or a Teams channel. And so now you have a live feed of the summary transcripts of every phone call that comes in, who called, when they called. There you go. Boom. Phones, admin delegated, give them your Calendly scheduling link or your TidyCal scheduling link, and boom, you're off the phones. You don't have to worry about phones anymore unless you're calling a client to, for a meeting or something, right?
And just one quick, that's great. That's a great tip. Quick add on to that is, let's say you have somebody internally that's answering the phones, right? You have your paralegal answering or your legal assistant, whoever, right? You have your first hire, they're actually answering the phones. Do not have a call service, a backup call service for after hours, okay? You must have an after hours service. When I first transitioned my team into answering the calls, I was like, well, I can just drop the backup, the backup service, right? I have somebody internally doing it now. I'm paying them, they're doing it full time. And what I realized is that, even now, at some point somebody said, well, you need to do that, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I'll add that back in. It should be just a couple of calls extra, right? We'll see what's there. We have over 100 calls a month that are after hours calls, either on the weekends or after the time frame, after our staff goes home for the day, or on their lunch breaks, or if they're on another call with another client. So really, just the answering service is a must-have, whether you have somebody in house or not, as well, because it's so important to not. It's so important to be able to take those calls. So,
yeah. And as a super brief second tip of the week, OpenPhone just launched their visual call routing editor thing that's now like drag and drop bubbles, just like Zapier or Make or whatever. And so you can actually visually drag and create your call flow if they're calling in during work hours or after work hours. You can set different, who's it going to forward to? Is it going to go to outside phones or is it going to go to inside phones? So easy to set up now. Like OpenPhone, I don't get paid by that, but major props to OpenPhone. They're awesome. But that's it. That's it for this week, guys. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. That helps other people find us and enjoy the content as well. If you'd like to take the conversation offline, join us in the Legal Tech Collective Facebook group where we talk AI and automation and all kinds of fun stuff like that all the time. So that's it for this week. Thanks again, John. Good talking.
Yep, always a pleasure. See you next week, Dan.
See you later.